Humanity's first contact. In the year 2157, humanity had spread across the stars, establishing thriving colonies on dozens of worlds. It was an age of exploration, wonder, and prosperity. But amid this golden era, they remained unaware of the great powers that lurked in the galactic depths. The Galactic Council, a conglomeration of ancient spacefaring species, ruled with an iron grip. For millennia, they had subjugated countless races, demanding tribute and unwavering obedience. Their advanced technology and vast armadas made resistance seem futile. Each new species they encountered was given a simple choice: submit or perish. Humanity's first contact came on a fateful day when an alien vessel entered the Terran system. The sleek, angular craft dwarfed humanity's greatest ships. It broadcast a message, not of greeting, but of demand. Earth was to send a delegation to the Council's seat of power for integration into the galactic community. Aboard the alien vessel, Zarn, a high-ranking Council operative, looked upon the blue-green world with disdain. These humans were primitive, their technology barely sufficient for interstellar travel. Conquering them would be trivial, but protocol demanded that they be given a chance to submit willingly. It was all a formality, of course. One way or another, humanity would kneel before the might of the Council. On Earth, the sudden appearance of an alien ship sent shockwaves through society. Governments scrambled to make contact, to determine the visitor's intentions. When the Council's demands were relayed, a sense of grim realization settled across the globe. Humanity had always suspected they were not alone in the universe. Now they faced a choice that would determine the fate of their species: the Council's ultimatum. The Council delegation arrived on Earth with great fanfare, their ships casting ominous shadows over the world's capitals. Led by Zarn, they were greeted by Earth's leaders with a mix of trepidation and forced diplomacy. In great halls normally reserved for heads of state, the full weight of the Council's might was brought to bear. Zarn wasted no time in delivering the Council's ultimatum. Humanity was to submit to Council rule, to offer up a tithe of resources, technology, and even citizens for conscription into the Council's armies. In return, Earth would be granted a minor seat in the galactic hierarchy, permitted to continue their existence as a vassal state. The human leaders listened in shocked silence as Zarn laid out the terms. Some balked at the sheer audacity of the demands, while others blanched at the implications of resistance. To refuse the Council was to invite annihilation. Humanity's fledgling space fleets, though advanced by their own standards, would be mere kindling before the Council's armada. Debates raged in the halls of power. Some argued for acquiescence, seeing submission as the only path to survival. Others countered that capitulation would be a living death, a betrayal of all that made humanity unique. The very spirit that had propelled them to the stars rebelled against the notion of servitude. As news of the Council's demands spread, panic gripped the globe. Riots erupted as people grappled with an uncertain future. Some called for immediate surrender, fearing the consequences of defiance. But in the heart of every human, a spark of stubbornness flickered. The idea of bowing to an alien power, of sacrificing their hard-won freedoms, was anathema to the human spirit. In the end, the decision fell to a small cadre of leaders, individuals chosen for their wisdom, courage, and unwavering commitment to humanity's ideals. They sequestered themselves, weighing the options, arguing late into the night. But when they emerged, their faces were set with grim determination. They had made their choice, and it was not submission. Humanity's defiant stand. The Council delegation had reconvened, expecting to hear humanity's acquiescence. Instead, they were met with a single word, delivered with quiet conviction by Earth's chosen representative: no. Zarn reeled as if struck. In all his cycles as a Council operative, he had never encountered such open defiance. Surely the humans misunderstood the situation. He reiterated the Council's demands, laying out in detail the consequences of refusal. But the human representative remained unmoved, eyes blazing with a stubborn resolve that sent a chill down Zarn's spine. The Council, informed of humanity's intransigence, was stunned. No species had ever dared refuse them so boldly. It was unthinkable, a direct challenge to their age-old authority. Whispers began to circulate among the subjugated races, dangerous whispers that questioned the Council's omnipotence. For Zarn, it was a personal affront. He had been tasked with bringing these upstart humans to heel, and their defiance was a blot on his reputation. As he departed Earth, he vowed that humanity would pay for their insolence. The Council would make an example of them, a warning to any others who might harbor thoughts of rebellion. On Earth, the gravity of the situation began to sink in. They had defied a galactic superpower, and retribution was certain. But amid the fear, there was also a sense of exhilaration. For the first time in history, all of humanity was united under a common cause. They would fight not for a single nation or ideology, but for the very right to determine their own destiny. The remnants of old rivalries and disputes faded away as humanity girded itself for the coming storm. They knew the odds were stacked against them, that the Council's technology far outstripped their own. But they also knew that they had no choice. To submit was to lose everything that made them human. And so, with grim resolve, they prepared for the fight of their lives. In the Council's grand halls, the debate raged. Some argued for immediate retaliation, a swift and brutal strike, to crush humanity's resistance. Others counseled caution, noting the unprecedented nature of the situation. Never before had a species refused the Council's will so openly. To act rashly was to risk undercutting the very foundation of their power. But in the end, there could be only one outcome. The Council's authority could not be challenged. Humanity's defiance would be met with the full might of the Council's armada. They would be made an example of, their resistance crushed, their spirit broken. The galaxy would learn the price of defiance. As the Council's war machine geared up for the assault, humanity steeled itself for the coming onslaught. They had made their stand. Now they would fight to make it mean something. In the face of annihilation, they would show the galaxy the true measure of the human spirit. Preparations for war. As the Galactic Council mobilized its forces, humanity scrambled to bolster its defenses. They knew they were outmatched in every conventional sense. The Council's ships were faster, their weapons more powerful, their technology far in advance of anything humanity had yet developed. But the humans had one advantage: the indomitable will to survive. Scientists and engineers worked around the clock, pushing the boundaries of human ingenuity. In secret laboratories hidden deep beneath the Earth's surface, they toiled to develop new weapons, new defenses, anything that might give them a fighting chance against the Council's overwhelming might. The most ambitious of these projects was the development of an advanced energy defense grid, drawing upon cutting-edge research into force fields and energy manipulation. The scientists sought to create a barrier that could withstand the Council's devastating weapons. It was a monumental task, fraught with setbacks and challenges, but driven by the knowledge that failure was not an option. Alongside the defense grid, work progressed on a daring plan to neutralize the Council's technological advantage. The key was a new weapon, an electromagnetic pulse, EMP, device of unprecedented power. If successful, it could disable the advanced electronics that gave the Council's ships their edge, leveling the playing field, if only for a critical moment. As the scientific efforts progressed, Earth's militaries began a massive mobilization. Soldiers, sailors, and pilots were recalled to duty. Training intensified, and recruitment surged as people from all walks of life volunteered to defend their planet. Ancient rivalries were set aside as nations pooled their resources and expertise. In the face of annihilation, humanity found a unity of purpose that had eluded them for centuries. But even as they prepared for war, humanity's leaders knew that conventional military might would not be enough. Against the Council's vast armada, even their most advanced weapons would be little more than a nuisance. Their only hope was to outthink their enemy, to use guile and cunning to outmaneuver a foe that had never known defeat. To that end, small teams of operatives were dispatched to infiltrate Council space. Disguised as members of subjugated species, they sought to gather intelligence, to find weaknesses in the Council's defenses, and to sow the seeds of rebellion among the oppressed masses. It was a desperate gamble, but one that offered a glimmer of hope in an otherwise grim situation. As the days turned into weeks, the tension on Earth reached a breaking point. The Council's armada was drawing closer, a sword of Damocles hanging over the planet's collective head. But even in the face of impending doom, humanity refused to bow. They had made their stand, and they would see it through, no matter the cost. In the great shipyards of Earth, a feverish construction effort was underway. Though they knew they could not match the Council ship for ship, the humans hoped that a few carefully crafted surprises might give them a crucial advantage in the coming battle. Engineers worked to modify existing designs, incorporating the new defensive and offensive technologies in a desperate race against time. The Council, for their part, watched humanity's preparations with a mix of amusement and disdain. To them, the humans' efforts were little more than the futile flailings of a doomed species. They had crushed countless rebellions over the millennia, and they had no doubt that humanity would be just another notch in their belt. The only question was how long it would take and how severe the punishment for humanity's defiance would be. But as the Council's armada entered the solar system and the final confrontation drew near, a strange feeling began to spread among the human defenders. It was not hope, exactly. The odds were still stacked heavily against them. But it was a grim determination, a resolve to fight to the last, to make the Council pay for every inch of ground, every ounce of blood. Humanity had chosen to stand against the darkness, to rage against the dying of the light, and even if they were to be snuffed out in the end, they would ensure that their defiance would echo through the ages, a testament to the unconquerable nature of the human spirit. The invasion begins. The Council armada emerged from the void like a swarm of angry locusts, their ships blotting out the stars. At their head was the flagship, a monstrous vessel bristling with weapons, a testament to the Council's overwhelming might. On the bridge, Zarn stood, his face a mask of cold determination. He would make the humans pay for their defiance, would grind their resistance into dust beneath his heel. As the armada entered Earth's solar system, they were met by a ragtag collection of human ships. Though vastly outgunned, the human fleet held their ground, forming a defensive perimeter around their homeworld. On the surface, millions watched the skies with bated breath, knowing that the next few hours would decide the fate of their species. The first salvo from the Council ships was devastating, a barrage of high-energy beams and missiles that lit up the void like a second sun. But to the Council's surprise, the human ships did not immediately crumble. The Advanced Energy Defense Grid, the product of months of frantic research and development, absorbed the brunt of the assault, the shields flickering but holding under the onslaught. Emboldened by their survival, the human fleet struck back, launching a volley of their own weapons. Though their firepower was dwarfed by that of the Council, they fought with a tenacity and skill that belied their relative technological disadvantage. Fighters darted among the larger ships, harrying the Council vessels and drawing their fire away from the main fleet. But even with the defense grid and the valiant efforts of the human forces, it was clear that they were outmatched. The Council's ships were simply too numerous, their technology too advanced. Slowly, inexorably, they began to push through the human defenses, grinding closer to Earth with each passing minute. On the surface, the mood was grim. Despite the best efforts of the global defense forces, it seemed that defeat was inevitable. In the great cities, people huddled in shelters, praying for a miracle. In the military command centers, ashen-faced officers watched the tactical displays, seeing their forces dwindle with each passing engagement. But even in the darkest hour, humanity refused to give in. With a stubborn defiance that bordered on madness, they threw everything they had at the invaders. Every ship, every soldier, every weapon was committed to the fight. If they were to fall, they would make sure the Council remembered their name. As the battle raged above, the secret weapon that had been humanity's last desperate hope was finally ready. The EMP device, a marvel of human ingenuity and desperation, was launched towards the heart of the Council fleet. It was a suicide mission, the delivery ship crewed by volunteers who knew they would not return. But if it worked, it could change the course of the war. The device detonated in a blinding flash of light, a pulse of electromagnetic energy that washed over the Council fleet like a tidal wave. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, one by one, the Council ships began to falter, their advanced systems shorting out, their weapons falling silent. The EMP had worked, but at a terrible cost. Seizing the moment, the human fleet surged forward, smashing into the disarrayed Council ranks like a thunderbolt. Though still outmatched, they fought with renewed vigor, determined to make the most of the brief window of opportunity. In the confusion, strike teams of human commandos, equipped with advanced boarding gear, latched onto the hulls of the larger Council vessels, determined to strike at the heart of the enemy. On the bridge of the flagship, Zarn watched in disbelief as his fleet faltered. This could not be happening, not to the mighty Galactic Council. But as reports of system failures and boarding actions flooded in, he realized that the humans had done the impossible. They had struck a blow against the undefeatable, had shaken the very foundations of the Council's power. But even as the tide began to turn, Zarn knew that the fight was far from over. The Council still had reserves, still had the vast resources of a galaxy-spanning empire to call upon. This was only the beginning, a first battle in a war that would determine the fate of not just humanity, but of every sentient species in the galaxy. And so, as the battle raged around him, Zarn steeled himself for the long fight ahead. The humans had proven themselves worthy adversaries, but the Council would not be so easily defeated. They would return with greater numbers and more advanced weapons, and they would not rest until humanity's defiance was nothing more than a bitter memory. But for now, against all odds, humanity had struck a blow for freedom, had shown that even the greatest of empires could be challenged. And in that moment, as the Council fleet reeled and the human ships pressed their advantage, a flicker of hope began to spread among the stars, a whisper that maybe, just maybe, a new dawn was on the horizon. Humanity's ingenuity prevails. In the aftermath of the EMP attack, the Council armada was in disarray. Their advanced systems, once their greatest strength, had become a liability. Ships drifted helplessly, their crews struggling to restore basic functions. But even in this moment of vulnerability, the Council was far from defeated. They still had the numbers, still had the brute strength to crush humanity beneath their heel. But the humans had no intention of giving them that chance. With the enemy reeling, they pressed their advantage, striking at the heart of the Council fleet with everything they had. Boarding parties, armed with human-made weapons designed specifically to exploit the vulnerabilities of Council technology, stormed the crippled ships, fighting their way to critical systems and engineering bays. It was a kind of warfare the Council had never faced before, a savage, close-quarters battle where the superior physicality and raw tenacity of the human soldiers proved decisive. They fought with a ferocity born of desperation, knowing that every ship they took out of the fight, every enemy they dispatched, was one less threat to their homeworld. On the surface of Earth, the tide of battle had turned. The Council's ground forces, once seen as an unstoppable juggernaut, found themselves bogged down in a nightmarish quagmire. Every city block became a fortress, every street a killing field. The humans fought with a savage cunning, using the urban terrain to their advantage, striking from ambush, and fading away before the Council troops could respond. In the skies above, the remnants of the human fleet, bolstered by the success of the EMP attack, continued to harass the Council ships. Though still heavily outgunned, they used their speed and maneuverability to their advantage, darting in to launch surgical strikes before retreating back to the cover of the planetary defense grid. But it was in the realm of cyber warfare that humanity truly shone. The Council, for all their technological prowess, had grown complacent, so assured of their superiority that they had never considered the possibility of a genuine threat. Human hackers, working in concert with the EMP attack, infiltrated the Council's networks, sowing chaos and disruption. Vital systems went offline, communications were scrambled, and the Council's once formidable coordination began to unravel. Back on the flagship, Zarn was in a state of disbelief. The reports coming in were impossible, the stuff of nightmares. The humans, these primitives, were not just resisting, but pushing back. Ships that had once been the pride of the Council armada were falling to the enemy, their crews overwhelmed by the ferocity of the human assault. In a desperate attempt to regain control, Zarn ordered a retreat. It was a bitter pill to swallow, an admission of vulnerability that went against everything the Council stood for. But the alternative was unthinkable. To lose here, to this upstart species, would be a blow from which the Council might never recover. As the battered remnants of the armada pulled back, the humans let out a cheer that echoed across the solar system. Against all odds, against an enemy that had once seemed invincible, they had prevailed. It was a victory that would go down in the annals of history, a testament to the indomitable human spirit. But even as they celebrated, the human leaders knew that this was only the beginning. The Council would be back, and they would not underestimate humanity a second time. The war was far from over, and the price of freedom would be high. In the weeks and months that followed, the story of humanity's defiance spread like wildfire across the galaxy. On 100 worlds, the seeds of rebellion began to sprout. Species that had long suffered under the Council's yoke looked to Earth as a beacon of hope, a sign that resistance was possible. The Council, for their part, found themselves facing an existential crisis. The myth of their invincibility had been shattered, and with it, the fear that had kept a galaxy in line. Whispers of dissent turned into open defiance as subject species began to question the Council's right to rule. For humanity, the victory was bittersweet. They had won their freedom, but at a terrible cost. Cities lay in ruins, millions had perished, and the specter of future conflict loomed on the horizon. But even as they mourned their losses, they began to rebuild, their resolve stronger than ever. In the grand halls of power, once the exclusive domain of the Council, a new voice began to emerge. Human diplomats, bolstered by their victory and the growing unrest among the Council's subject species, called for a new order, a galactic community based on cooperation and mutual respect, rather than fear and subjugation. It would be a long road, fraught with challenges and setbacks. The Council, even in their weakened state, would not relinquish their power easily. There would be more battles, more sacrifices. But for the first time in millennia, there was hope, a chance for a better future. As for Zarn, the once proud Council operative found himself a pariah, a symbol of the old order's failure. Cast out by his masters, he wandered the galaxy, a witness to the change that was sweeping across the stars. In his darkest moments, he could not help but marvel at the audacity of the humans, at the way they had taken the Council's greatest strengths and turned them into weaknesses. It was a lesson that would not be forgotten, a reminder that even the greatest of powers could fall if they underestimated the strength of those they sought to dominate. The galaxy had changed, and nothing would ever be the same. In the end, the story of humanity's defiance would become legend, a tale passed down from generation to generation. It would be a reminder of the power of courage, of the unbreakable nature of the human spirit. And though the road ahead was uncertain, one thing was clear. Humanity had taken its first steps onto the galactic stage, and they would not be the last. The Council had sought to make an example of humanity, to crush their resistance and reassert their dominance. But in the end, it was humanity that had made an example of the Council, showing the galaxy that even the mightiest of empires could be challenged, that hope and freedom were ideals worth fighting for. And so, as the dust settled and the rebuilding began, humanity looked to the stars with renewed determination. They had faced the greatest threat they had ever known, and they had emerged victorious. The future was uncertain, but one thing was sure. Whatever challenges lay ahead, humanity would face them head-on, united and unafraid. For they had proven, beyond any doubt, that the human spirit was indomitable, that even in the darkest of times, hope would always endure.